advertising works. We like that. You just have to flog some stuff sometimes. Clean out your data, get rid of anything you don't need.
Welcome to Add to Cart, Australia's leading e-commerce podcast that express delivers all you need to know in the fast-moving world of online retail. Here's your host, Bushy.
Welcome to another episode of Add to Cart. My name is Nathan Bush, otherwise known as Bushy, joining you from the land of the Turrbal people here in Brisbane, Australia. Now, from working with government on privacy reform, to working with major advertising players, to running mentorship programs, today's guest has one of the most interesting and, I felt, at times overwhelming roles in the digital industry. Today, we are joined by Gai Leroy, CEO of IAB Australia. With over 25 years of experience in the media and digital industry and leading the IAB here in Australia for the last 6 years, Gai has a deep understanding of digital media, audience development, and data analytics. She's been instrumental in helping businesses navigate the complexities of modern retail by combining strategic insights with a focus on consumer behavior and making all of that make sense to businesses all around Australia. If you are looking to understand the latest trends and prepare your business for the future, Gai's expertise is exactly what you need. I feel her practical and common sense advice really helps retailers navigate some of the big changes that are coming up, especially around data privacy and the changing workforce. I've been wanting to interview Gai for a long time because I'm a huge fan of the IAB's e-commerce report. It's been going for the last 4 years. And today we draw and discuss on some of those findings from the latest report that came out earlier last month. There's also a new talent report, which we talk about. Both reports are fantastic, and I've put the links to these reports in the show notes if you want to get them. In this conversation, we'll also talk about Amazon's rapid growth and how that's reshaping the retail landscape in Australia. And of course, you can't talk Amazon without talking Temu, but Gai has a very different view on both of those. We talk about the upcoming Privacy Act and the reforms for that and what that means for your business. Gai is right in there with the decision makers on this one. So it's a fantastic insight on what might be coming down the line. And then we dive into why the juniorisation of the workforce in advertising might be cause for concern, especially if you're over 50. There's a really damning stat in there for those that are over 50. Now, if you haven't already, I would love to invite you to sign up for my weekly e-commerce newsletter. Every Tuesday morning, I share a key industry insight, my little piece of opinion, along with 5 must-read e-commerce stories, research pieces, or case studies from the past week. I like to think it's a great way to keep you up to date with what's trending in e-commerce and give you a few little resources that you might not normally have. You can sign up for free at addtocart.com.au/subscribe. All right, thanks to our partners, Shopify Plus and Deliver in Person, here's our conversation with Gai Leroy, CEO of IAB Australia. Gai, welcome to Add to Cart.
Thanks, Bushy.
So good to have you here. I've been so deep in your reports lately. You've got the 2 reports at the moment, the Australian e-commerce report, and then you've got your talent report that came out a week later. Just such great quality for retail at the moment.
Thank you. It's very hot at the moment in retail media, and I think everyone wants to know about like the future of work as well. So the talent report was perfect timing in terms of what's actually going on. Am I going to have a job in a year?
Yeah. And we're going to dive into both of those, and hopefully I do have a job in a year. We'll see how we go. So for people who may not have worked with you, read your reports, come across your events, can you explain what the IAB is and how it works for your members?
Of course. I guess I should even what the acronym is. So it's the Interactive Advertising Bureau. So we're the trade association for digital advertising. We're part of a network of 45 different IABs around the world who all have their own flavour. So we all keep in touch and understand what's going on in different markets. We run the Australian chapter. So we do a lot in events, policy, tech, research. And I guess our member base is quite broad, but anyone who is involved in digital advertising, whether it's buy or sell or ad tech, side of things.
Amazing. Such a cool space to be in right now, and great to have someone like you leading it. Let's dive straight into the Australian e-commerce report. Now in its 4th year, it's starting to get a lot of traction because we're seeing the year-on-year changes, which is what I'm finding really interesting in it. And this year you expanded from Australia and included stats from New Zealand as well, which was fantastic. One of the key things that I saw come out of this report, and it has been echoed in some of the other reports we've seen out, such as Shopify's retail report, is the focus for customers on convenience and lower prices driving consumer behavior. As retailers, it's probably not what we want to hear all the time, but it makes a lot of sense given the cost of living pressures. At the same time, we've got a lot of retailers who are struggling, don't have a lot of margin to give away. They want to make as much profit or just be profitable at the moment. How do you feel retailers are best to strike a balance between what customers want and what they can actually afford to do at the moment?
Yeah, it's a really tricky one, and I thought cost of living was a strong theme through last year's report, and this year it's gone up to another level. A couple of things. So I think trying to explain value. So retailers with a deeper connection with their own customer base, it's easier to do that. You've got more time, they've got a knowledge of you, but understanding if there's something beyond just a discount, what you can offer. I think partnering is really interesting. We might talk about that more. So, if you have a relationship with another retailer, what's that sort of combined benefit? And just keeping loyal, showing the loyalty. The other thing that's really important is, and again, this will be easier for those with a deep relationship, ensuring data security. So data privacy is top of mind. Look, price is still number one, but making sure those other factors can shine to give you every chance of success. And then there's more tactical things, and we might talk about distribution later. But, you have to turn up everywhere, like it or not, just, making sure that you're got that, we talk about share of voice a lot in media, but, that share of attention, share of real estate, easy to find.
You got no silver bullet for us, do you?
I'm sorry. You've got to spend a lot of time and effort and go through a lot of data. But if you do it and your competitor doesn't, you've got that advantage.
Spot on. All right. Well, you've given us so many points to jump off there. We might start with loyalty, because I think when people are thinking loyalty at the moment, they're immediately thinking structured loyalty programs. And your research showed how popular they are. I think there was a stat in there that 92% of Australians are a member of a loyalty program. I'll have to check if I've got that figure exactly right.
And then, a huge amount that are a part of multiple loyalty programs. So that continues to grow. People are definitely looking for a discount there, but they're also wanting to understand why a retailer's collecting data. The one stat I did love in the report, and I can't remember the exact number, but people, what data are they willing to give away? And they're willing to give date of birth if you give them something for their birthday. So it's really translating that, individual piece of data, why I'm giving it to you and what's in it for me. So, don't be afraid of, helping to connect the dots on why that data is useful for a retailer.
Yeah. To your point around value, it wasn't just giving discounts or accumulating points to get X dollars off. I saw free shipping was up there as one of the key things. And, as a retailer, that's one of the incentives that we love playing with, because we can actually play with that to put certain limits on it. And it's not just discounting our products. So I think that comes back to your value conversation, right?
Yeah, and also you're seeing people that are paying for loyalty programs. So again, if there's enough convenience, enough value, if it's going to save me a car trip, I might be willing to pay $10 a month or whatever it might be to be part of a program.
And Woolworth's loyalty program and Flybuys came out well and truly on top as the most popular. Were there any others in there, any others that come top of mind for you that you think they're really doing loyalty well?
I think the breadth of different ones just, show that, whatever makes your heart sing. The area that's really jumped up over the last year are sort of the cashback, shopback pieces as well, and how they play into the ecosystem. But they've definitely as a non-user, and my members who are in that area will now be sending me, that I have to sign up. But that has surprised me how quickly, which it shouldn't, because, it's a, immediate, financial benefit for consumers. But that place and that data ownership in the ecosystem is quite significant.
Yeah, that third-party loyalty is really interesting. Like, even last weekend, I was at a barbecue and was telling people about cash rewards because we had Anthony on a few months ago and explaining the concept of you can buy what you normally buy at the prices that you normally buy, but if you visit cash rewards first, click through, you'll get X% of your money back. And people are dubious of it. Like, it's like, where's the scam? Where's the catch? It's a hard concept to explain, but it is growing in popularity so quickly.
Yeah, and I saw your post on LinkedIn this morning that we're not allowed to talk about, Cyber Monday and Black Friday type specials. But there is an element of what came through this study for both those types of sales events and trade events of discoverability. So if someone can discover something new, it doesn't have to be a cheaper price. It can be something they haven't seen before. So don't think about, discounting or sales events having to just be price cutting. It can just be something special. That event element really came through strongly this year, and it is some of that's that, the big mass events, but some of it's also, like the Vogue shopping or the smaller bespoke pieces. So consumers are really, it gives a touch of that experiential, even though there are a lot online. So make sure your partner will find something new for those events.
I love that point around events because it depends on what mindset you're coming from, whether this is a sales event or whether it's a new customer acquisition event, because you treat it very differently in your business then, depending on if you're measuring it on weekly sales or if you're trying to bring that customer into your ecosystem and then build on it from there. Let's talk about Amazon, because I did a post on this as well when the report came out, because it was the number one stat that I felt was it just hit me over the head when I saw you compared where Australian customers had shopped over the last 12 months, and 54% of Australian customers had shopped at Amazon, which in itself isn't surprising, but that was 43% last year. And it felt like, last year it was almost like a pack. That top 10, it was like 43, 42, 42, 41. It was fairly competitive. This year, Amazon, that bar graph went straight out until the second. I think it was Kmart at 41, 42, 43. Big difference, right? It feels like 2024 was the year that Amazon just exploded and kind of created their own territory in Australia. Would that be fair?
Yeah, absolutely. It was a huge leap. But what's been interesting is for the last probably 5 years, maybe 10 years, if you look at not from this study, but the research that we do in terms of rating, so how many people are going to sites? So they're not necessarily spending, but they're going there, they're researching, they're browsing. Amazon has always been like so far ahead of the curve, ahead of the pack, and now that gap between who's there maybe researching and then buying somewhere else, and that gap has really shrunk. So more and more of those browsers are converting, which is an interesting, I guess, lesson for other retailers. Not everyone can be an Amazon. I know it's a big hard thing, but getting people through the front door, and even if they don't convert for the first few years or whatever, that loyalty, that trust, that and then being able to make it as easy as possible, can really convert well.
Yeah, and it was only last week that Amazon announced same-day delivery in Sydney. So it means that 90% of people in Sydney can now get their parcels if they order before 12 p.m. and get them the same day. That's pretty hard to compete with.
It is, because the report, even Amazon Today with, next day delivery for Amazon Prime, it has changed consumer expectations. So if you saw the list of, the different things that consumers are hoping for, that sort of quick delivery piece is continues to grow. So next year, I'm sure that jumps even further. And as you mentioned, we did New Zealand. We covered the New Zealand market for the first time this year, which was really interesting. And Amazon, although you can buy from Amazon, they're not really a presence in New Zealand. And you could see the difference in consumer expectations around delivery and returns. The whole market is different because Amazon's not that major player in that market. And it also opens up room for other players. So the list of people at the top of the game, and I must say I was surprised, the number one over in New Zealand, and maybe I shouldn't be, but Temu jumped into that marketplace without Amazon there. So
yeah, why do you think Temu's more popular in New Zealand than Amazon. What's the big difference between our two countries?
Yeah, so Amazon haven't got a headquarters. They can't, it's not a major presence there. You can still buy, but, there's no guarantee of delivery. Product's not right there. So, yeah, much smaller footprint in the New Zealand market. And we know in Australia it took longer than everyone was expecting for Amazon to become a major player. And this year, as well as the same-day delivery, and this, really interesting from a media point of view, the ads on Prime at the same time. So that ecosystem continues to get richer for retailers and advertisers and partners.
Yes, and we're going to dive into all the world of data and retail media soon. But before we move on, Temu is an interesting one, and I want to pick your brains on this because in this year's report, 25% of Australians had shopped there in the past year. I don't think they were even on the 2023 report, were they?
I think we might have had them, but they were fairly low. We've been watching them closely from an ad spend, from an audience point of view for quite a while because, a lot of our major stakeholders are publishers and platforms. And I don't think I've ever seen an individual retailer or advertiser called out in earnings calls in the US. So they're never named. It's always like a large Chinese retailers, and they're spending enough that they actually sort of shape that ad market. I think a lot of you and a lot of your listeners will know about sort of, it does increase the ad bids on certain areas. But it's quite interesting. So Temu, when they spend, they get sales, which good. Advertising works. We like that. But when they pull back spend, so some months they do spend less, and the spend goes down in line, the sales go down in line with their spend, which again sounds logical, but for most other retailers, there'll be a bit more of a halo effect from their other ad spend. So that it's not necessarily driving loyalty, long-term sales. So, there is hope if they, run out of those big marketing budgets, there's room for everyone else. But I don't see every other retailer that I bang on to and go, please spend more on brand, on, the loyalty, the connection, because it will return, in the long term as well as the short term. Whereas Temu is very much tap on, tap off.
Yeah, sugar hits.
Yeah.
That's really interesting. And from your monitoring, because it's a huge issue from a competitive perspective for online retailers in terms of market share. But I feel the bigger issue with Temu at the moment is exactly what you said, driving up the price of performance advertising, especially when it comes to Google Shopping and being able to have share of voice in the market because you're essentially being frozen out by people with deeper pockets. From what you've seen with Temu, is there a rhyme or reason to their advertising strategy, or is it kind of just throw as much money and investment in there as possible?
I think there is a bit more. It's tricky because their buying's not done here. Their strategy's not done here. So it's a very global approach, which actually gives local retailers, yes, it might be tricky when they're spending a lot in Meta or Google, TikTok, the big global platforms, but they're not going to be spending as much in the local players. So thinking creatively around where are Temu not showing up, because they're not showing up everywhere. They're trying to make it easy to spend big chunks of money across the world as easy as possible. So look for that clear space where other people aren't spending.
How was your last e-commerce delivery experience? Did your order arrive on time and undamaged? Or did it fail to fulfill expectations? If you are a high-value brand, just think about the low-value experiences in the last mile affecting your reputation. Delivered in full on time, or DIFOT if you're in a hurry, is a metric that matters for retailers and customers. Why? Because it shows whether deliveries are happening reliably and on time. Many Aussie retailers are settling for 70 to 80% DIFOT scores and dealing with a lot of unhappy customers. However, after partnering with Deliver in Person, experience-driven brands like Samsonite, The Party People and July see a consistent 99.6% DIFOT score. Don't settle for less. Make your last mile experience the first thing that customers remember. Learn more at deliverinperson.com. Well, based on that clear space, one of the services and the functions of IAB for your members is to be able to track investment and presence across all digital ad channels. Based on what you're seeing, I'd love your thoughts on, are there any channels that you think are getting more airtime than they deserve in terms of what they're delivering in terms of performance for retailers? And are there any that are going under the radar that you're like, there's your blue space, there's your area?
So here's my least favourite child, and you're asking me, yeah? Okay, I'll reframe a little bit, but obviously video has been the biggest growth over the last 5-6 years. That continues to grow and fragment in terms of the types of video options that are there. I'm going to say, and I will make sure everyone listens to the second bit of my answer here, that probably retail media has been overhyped at the moment. Not overinvested, but overhyped. I don't think, and we're guilty of this because everyone wants to know about it. We've got 2 new reports coming out, shortly. But I think now that it's becoming more mature, the expectations of that sector in terms of measurement, ROI, it's the normal hype cycle. So hottest new thing, and now we need to put all the infrastructure in place to make sure people are happy with their investments, understand how it fits in with other areas. So probably way too many opinion pieces written on it. So hopefully that will come down, and we'll go about actually building a robust ecosystem for all those retailers spending a lot of money jumping into the space. In terms of things that go under the radar, look, it's not my natural heartland, and I'm always quite amazed by the affiliate area. It's one that works as a silo a little bit too much. So I have an affiliate working group, and I think they're sick of me saying, can you just mix with the other media people sometimes? Because neither side knows about each other enough. But that definitely, the investment's been strong there. The thing we're talking about in terms of consumers, it's fitting in with that, cost of living, as well as publishers and media owners really needing some, extra revenue stream. So that area is maturing. You've got content players who you wouldn't have imagined going to that space, whether it's News Corp or our media, really leaning in. And I find that a really fascinating area. The area I think should get more investment, just because I like it, is that a good reason?
Yeah, of course it is.
And it's the perfect forum to speak to it. It's audio. I still think it's harder to buy. Podcasting and streaming, it's a bit more fragmented, it's a bit harder to do, but that connection and the ability to do creative, that's not too expensive, have that relationship in your ears. If you're willing to spend a bit of time, you've still got a better chance of having a high share of voice and I won't say it's cheap, but a lower price point than other areas.
Yeah, absolutely. I wrote an opinion piece in Inside Retail a couple of weeks ago around the power of audio based on what I've learned through this podcast. And it is a totally different relationship. You can't cost it on a CPM or the same way you can do it everywhere else. And it's similar to, when we picked up this morning, it was like, you're like, oh, hey, Bushy, how are you? And I'm like, we have never met. But you're kind of able to get those relationships that people feel familiar with you and they trust you, and there's that next level of relationship that you don't get through other mediums.
So, yeah, spend more in audio.
Spend more in audio. I love it. You did mention at the start, and I want to pick up on the affiliates piece because you mentioned, what came to mind for you straight away when we were talking was partnerships as an opportunity for brands. And affiliates is obviously one way to do partnerships. Are there other interesting ways that you've seen brands come together for partnerships to maybe share customer relationships and to market in a more cost-effective way?
So I think it's the partnerships are more selective and considered are the ones that I like. So sometimes everyone's partnering with everyone and it loses meaning. And this also feeds into, and I know we'll chat a bit more in a minute, but privacy reform. So if you've got valuable first-party data, a relationship with a customer, you really want to partner with someone who has something similar and a similar ethos to data management, coming together in a compliant way through a clean room or whatever. So I think there'll be more of those direct top end of town partnership deals. We've seen Qantas do it for many years, but more and more when I look at the top 100 sites that people go to, in the olden days, it used to be, they're the ad sites or the commercial sites, and these ones are, the banks or the government or whatever. So I would just suggest everyone look at that top 200 list. Everyone is a media player. maybe not government, but everyone else, is an opportunity if you feel you've got very similar ethics. Doesn't even have to be similar customers, because that synergy could be good as well.
I think it's too about discovering the assets that you've got as a company, because, and I think that's your point maybe around retail media, is that all of a sudden these brands are like, we've got all these eyeballs. This is actually an asset that we can, leverage. And it's the same as customer data. This is an asset that we've got. We've obviously got to treat it with respect and privacy. But we have this sitting here that we can partner and actually leverage for sales. It's not just something that has to be just ours, as all the walled gardens that are popping up have shown. I want to dive into privacy because I think this is really important, and I know you're passionate about it. We've obviously got Australia's Privacy Act review, which has been in the works for the last couple of years, and I know you're involved in that as a key player. What do you think retailers should be preparing for as that's in the works and likely to be activated in the next, we're all guessing, next year or so?
Yeah, there'll be some interesting timings coming out, but some of it's advice that we've been giving for a long time that should prepare retailers for most of the reforms. I mean, clean out your data, get rid of anything you don't need, do a data audit and a pixel and tags audit, because one of the main areas of concern with consumers and government is that sharing piece. So if there is data or signals shooting off everywhere, and signals is pretty broad at the moment. So, some of the wording that we're seeing currently around personal information is probably not what we'd consider personal information. So, whether it's a cookie or an IP address or any of that could be. So rethink around your sharing and your usage of data, and widening out what you would consider personal information. So I would be reviewing every tech partnership. What am I allowing them to have access to? Every agency. So just think where your data could be going, and if that's going to stop, what are the economic ramifications for my business? So, but to that point of, do I partner with someone else with first-party data? Your partnerships could look quite different. Start being more transparent with your consumers. Consumers will have a lot more ability to complain. So the clearer you are on your website and the more transparent you are around decision-making, data usage, it will hopefully limit people thinking you're doing something with their data that you're not. But yeah, just the amount of data collection, just our industry's created a narrative that first-party data is the holy grail, which is, but you don't need to know everything about everyone to flog them a book or a pen. Like really, there's limits to what those signals can tell you.
Do you feel that where we'll end up is similar to GDPR? So if retailers are preparing and they've kind of got that framework in mind, that's a good starting spot?
It's going to be a little bit different from the indications that we've got. So there will be a lot of similarity with GDPR, but from a consumer engagement point of view, so GDPR, you've very much got a bit of an opt-in, you've got your banner blindness, your explicit consent, whereas Australia will be a little bit more, I guess, rules around what's fair and reasonable to do. So not necessarily opting into everything, a lot more clarity around opting out, but you as a business will have to prove beyond doubt that you need that data and that a consumer is knowingly, being tracked, giving data. So there's a bit of philosophical shift, which sounds good, but it can almost be a higher bar because it's almost an insurance policy. But you said I can have it versus I need to run my business in a way that's got this at the forefront of my mind the whole time. The other thing, privacy is, around the world, is a fascinating, a polite word of saying it's a bit of a mess, because any retailers, and most retailers would be having people come from overseas to visit their site or marketing to other markets, and the patchwork of privacy reform. We do a lot with IAB in the US. I think there's now 15 different states that have got their 15 different privacy policies. They continue to roll out. I feel for particularly smaller businesses who have to think if they're, dealing with any customers in different regions, and that's only going to get harder, unfortunately.
Yeah, exactly like you said. I can hear a lot of UX designers go, oh, thank goodness we don't have to have all those customer opt-ins. But at the same time, it feels like it could get a little bit murky when you talk about fair and reasonable in terms of where do you draw that line?
So we do a lot of work with government to try and get some clarity on that. But, it's hard to build legislation that's specific. And even with GDPR, like we're still, 5 years in, and we're still seeing court cases that are getting clarity on what things mean. So law is not always crystal clear. So even when we do get the wording, there'll be a range of consultations, but also time for the industry to get better. So, to get compliant. So there'll be a lot of work for lawyers. So tell your kids to do law, but, a lot of time for businesses too within that compliance period. And please don't do what every company in Europe did. Please don't leave it to the last 2 weeks. So we'll be hammering that point regularly of where people are on that journey to get ready for compliance.
If people are early on that journey and they're at the point of going, oh, geez, I need to get a good view over where all my data is going, what's connected to what, what's passing where, especially for those small to medium businesses, do you think it's realistic that they can do that in-house with the level of knowledge required? Or would you usually recommend having an expert in this space come in and do an initial audit?
Look, if you can afford an expert, I would do. It depends on how complicated and how many partners you've got. So if you've got a very simple commerce site, you might have a Meta and a Google relationship, you're not doing other partnerships, you probably, can work it out internally. But if you've got very complicated systems, measurement pieces going everywhere, you're much safer having something. The government has committed to providing guidance and frameworks, so we are, fingers crossed, hoping that will be okay. The fact that we are likely to see small business included for the first time, very small business, means that we'll really have to provide support for small organisations.
Not a natural place for a lot of people to play.
No, it's not what their strength is. But, the industry bodies will be there to help. We'll do what we can, and hopefully the Privacy Commissioner, they have a lot of resources and just interpreting what it means for your business.
And I can't move on from this topic without talking about Google and their cookies. Obviously, that announcement a few weeks ago that they are abandoning their plans to scrap third-party cookies. Do you think in the light of what you see coming down the line, it changes anything?
Not a lot. I mean, it will keep some smaller players, some smaller publishers, with a bit more of a sustainable path. So there's a little bit more glue at the bottom there. I think the fact that the timing changed quite a few times means that most people who have been probably overly reliant on a device that's, already been deprecated in a lot of browsers, most people that we deal with are already thinking what their ID solutions beyond the cookie. But, this is where the complication of regulation in different areas, you've got privacy on one hand, you've got competition issues in other areas. So, it's trying to find a regime that, pleases consumers and governments in all markets, which is
I don't envy your position at all with all these changes taking place.
No, it's good. They all come from the right place. The reason it's just implementing them is not always easy.
Understood. From winning the block to establishing a leading personal care brand during COVID, it's fair to say that the Alive Body team can do anything that they put their mind to. But as the business grew rapidly, third-party applications didn't speak to each other, managing two separate sites for D2C and wholesale got costly, and budgets were blowing out. Sounds like the typical reno, really. But as we know, the Alive Body team don't settle for standard renos. That's why they upgraded to Shopify Plus, combining D2C and wholesale stores with a unified backend, creating country-specific stores, and optimizing the customer experience with Shopify Function. They've now got an award-winning online home, and it's paying off with 3 times more customer acquisitions and a 47% increase in conversion rate. It's enough to put a smile on any skeptical judge's face. Check out shopify.com/au/plus and get in touch with the Aussie Shopify Plus team to see how Shopify Plus can help you get your technical foundations in order. I'd love to skip, and we mentioned that you've got a few research reports out at the moment, and the one that you released last week was your industry talent report, which is always fantastic and threw up a bunch of surprising outcomes. And the headline that got me was the juniorisation of the workforce, especially when it comes to advertising and marketing. And the stat in there that you highlighted was that 5% of the industry is over 50. That's crazy, like crazy small.
I know. As a woman over 50 in the industry, I don't know, I need to buy lottery tickets or something because I don't know how I'm still here.
What's going on?
Yeah, look, the industry overall, ad tech, media, advertising, margins are tight, and there is a lot of companies rejigging their workforces to have fabulous young people. I don't want to, trick with this is, not to sound like we don't want amazing young people in our industry, but they're chopping at the head and the middle. So you are losing a lot of experience there, and you're not necessarily providing the support for the young ones who are coming in. It's sort of cheeky. Every company wants someone with 2 to 3 years experience. So could someone else please train my people and then just hand them over? That would be good. So please don't give up on intern programs, grad programs. It's worthwhile. But yeah, from an aging point of view, from the older end of the workforce, we'll definitely have to be more creative. I think that's why a lot of people go into consulting when they're older, fractional CMOs, all of that side of things. But I think there will be hopefully a bit of a shift back, particularly when commercial times are tough. You really do need commercial leaders who have been through good and bad times, who have that perspective of, being there before.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, we saw that in COVID, saw an explosion of talent into e-commerce. People who were getting heads of positions that maybe weren't ready for heads of positions. And then the speed came out of the market and they were the first ones to go. That exactly what you said, that middle level chop. But all of a sudden you had people who were great doers and on the tools and great specialists promoted into leadership. And then a lot of organizations saying, actually, we don't value leadership as much as we do hands-on skills.
Yeah, the one pleasing thing out of the report was when we looked at what training's needed. And normally it's like, I need to know about programmatic or something really tangible, and it was leadership and management skills. So I'm hoping that that's been recognised and that the companies get more mature, but also the sort of the new to market employees get that support, because it is, there's a lot of people who've been promoted very quickly and it'd be very stressful.
Yeah. What are you seeing from a training and skills perspective? Obviously, you offer a lot in this space as well. Where is the real demand for skills beyond leadership? But if we talk more, I don't like calling it tangible, but hands-on experience, whether it's emerging technologies or emerging channels or skills, where are you seeing the focus?
AI.
I should have predicted that answer, right?
So from a more generic piece, it's AI. So many organizations are so under pressure that from a training point of view, they're very practical around in-platform training. So it's, very specific to a partner, to a piece of tech, which is great, but it's leaving a less time to develop those other skills. So, but yeah, definitely AI is the one that's probably closest to, the discovery of new skills.
I've heard you talk about and be very passionate around making sure people have the fundamentals of marketing behind them, because people like me, and I'm not sure on you, but we went through marketing degrees to get to where we are. And now we find a lot of people come in via specialties, whether that be AI, whether that be by design, development, whatever it is, and may not have those marketing fundamentals. Do you still think that's as important today? And can people kind of backtrack from having those specialties to getting those marketing fundamentals under their belt?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, having both is going to be the gold standard. So you can definitely still catch up. I think it will happen, because what I'm starting to hear from a lot of brands, and it'd be particularly pertinent to your space, is, okay, I'm maxing out my performance dollars, and that brand building piece, that longer term investment. We talked about the loyalty piece. I haven't been, feeding the top of the funnel for a long while because I, haven't been able to sell it into my CFO, or it's just not my skill set. But now it's an economic problem. That's when you always see change in an organisation. So I think some of those classic marketing skills will come into play. We just need to. It's really hard for sort of CMOs or people running businesses, to carve off the money that may not return today. But if you think about it like a bank deposit, that's how we go to the CFOs, and go, okay, if you could invest something that's going to give you a return of maybe 1.2 today, but, you'll get another, 30% over the next few years. That's the sort of language that can open up some more spend from investors or from CFOs. But I know it's true. I mean, we talk all the time about the ideal marketing mix, and yeah, you just have to flog some stuff sometimes. So, but if people understand those fundamentals while they're doing it, they might be able to carve off 5 or 10% for some longer term.
Yeah. Speaking of fundamentals, your report also said that nearly half, 48% of organisations, are starting to require staff members back in the office 3 days a week. Are we going back to our old ways?
They're trying. They're not always succeeding. But yeah, so it's very much shifted. Last year, there were a lot of, we're trying for 2 days. This year, it's gone to 3. I think there's been so much turnover of staff. Initially, when everyone knew each other, they'd spent a lot of time together. It didn't matter so much. But now they're teams, who haven't bonded in person. And as we've mentioned, there are a whole lot of quite new to market people who need to sit and shadow and learn and listen. So I'm not going to pretend I know what the right mix is, but there's definitely a push to get people back in a bit more. I think it's cheaper than sending whole teams to offsites, twice a year. It's like, just come into the office and hang out and we'll give you a pizza and some beers.
I think that's fair, but I think it kind of goes both ways, is that if I am coming into the office, I'd like some leadership around me. I'd like some, a bit of culture, a little bit of, facilitation together rather than me being on a phone to other people who might be at home.
Absolutely. And I think the media agencies are really trying to nail that. So when people come in, there's a reason and inspiration.
Yeah, lovely. Now, Gay, you've been in the CEO role for 6 years, and it sounds like there's no shortage of challenges and opportunities to work through based on what we've talked about. Where do you think the IAB can make the biggest impact over the next 6 years?
It's probably our basics, but there's going to be new things to do. So all the different pieces of reform, whether it's looking at scams, looking at privacy, looking at online safety, someone has to come up with those frameworks and the aligned industry ways of operating, protocols, etc. So locally and globally, that's our most important piece. So making sure CTV, podcasts, all the new areas have ways of operating so that we can compliantly and efficiently serve the ads, serve the marketing materials. So that's the biggest piece. We play a huge role in community, which is something quite joyous. Like, we do bring people together, whether it be for events, but we also have a incredibly popular mentorship program. So which is really nice. So we've had about 450 people go through that program, over 2,500 hours of mentoring. So that, I think, will continue to, from a skills but also a mental health point of view, play a big role. And then the third area is where we play a lot, is continuing to interrogate and investigate marketing effectiveness. So, the rebirth of market mix modelling, like, what does it mean? How does it work? Is it robust? Trying to get marketers away from last click attribution, which, I'm probably the wrong audience for this one, but, the education piece of what all the pieces of the puzzle, what they mean. So trying to get people to do experimentation a little bit more. So, yeah, those 3 areas. I think they're hopefully everyone will see value in what we're bringing to the table.
Oh, you do a fantastic job. Everything from the reports to the mentorship programs to the opinion pieces to the data that you bring forward for the industry is phenomenal. So thank you very much for all the work that you guys do. if people want to learn more, maybe get their hands on the report, check out some of the things that you got on the website, what's the best way to do that and to get in touch with the IAB team?
So visit our website, iabaustralia.com.au. There's contact details. I'm on LinkedIn. We love to connect with new people, new communities, get different takes on, businesses large and small. So please reach out.
Love your work. And you got a podcast.
We have a podcast. I don't know if I'm as professional or as regular as you, but we have an IAB Australia podcast where we try and hit on a range of issues around digital advertising. So
I've got no doubt you're more professional than me, that's for sure. Thank you, Gay, for joining us. That was awesome. Really appreciate all your insights. It's just such a fast-paced industry, and it's so great to have someone like you on top of all the issues to make sense of it for us.
Thanks for having me. It's been fun.
I am so in awe of Gay for all the major issues and the huge changes she is across. She is able to explain them so clearly and so practically for people without inciting panic or alarm. I felt kind of calm, even though we covered some really big topics. And two, she stayed pretty calm and level-headed throughout. All right, here are the 3 lessons I took from the conversation. Number 1, Amazon's impact. It's no surprise to anyone that Amazon's rapid expansion in Australia is reshaping consumer expectations. But the IAB report showed how far Amazon has come in 2024 in terms of the number of Australians who are now shopping there, especially compared to the number 2 retailer. There is a big gap starting to emerge. Retailers must adapt or risk falling behind. I especially like the insight that Gay gave around Temu snapping up global ad networks. And I think that her highlight of saying that, yes, they are doing that on the big platforms like Meta and Google, but they're doing this at a global scale, which means that there is an opportunity for local retailers to be creative and really immerse yourself in local networks and local media that those big players can't be bothered diving into because they're not global players. That's your blue ocean. Number 2, prepare for privacy reform. The upcoming Privacy Act reforms will require businesses to be more diligent with data. It is likely to drop in the next 12 months, probably early 2025. Start preparing now by auditing your data and being transparent with your customers. The big hint here, and especially when we talked about the comparison with GDPR, is that the focus in Australia will be about allowing customers transparency over their data and allowing customers to opt out easily. Both of these things are things you should be focused on right now anyway. So don't wait to get started. Have a real focus on understanding where your data is going and how you make that data experience really easy and transparent for your customers right now. And number 3, leadership matters. The juniorisation of the workforce in advertising and digital presents challenges, but it also presents opportunity, and it's exciting to know there's so much great talent coming through. However, investing in leadership training and retaining experienced staff will be crucial in navigating tough times. It might be worth a check-in with your team right now that they feel they are getting the leadership and development that they need. We've been through a lot of change. There's a lot more change coming. Might be time for a quick pulse check. Make sure you go check out IAB Australia's resources on their website. Go give their podcast a listen and stay up to date with digital advertising and retail trends. I'll add the links to the reports that we mentioned in this conversation to the blog and into the show notes. You can check that out on addtocart.com.au. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider sharing it with a friend or a colleague who might enjoy some of those insights that came out of that conversation with Gay. Or you could leave us a review on Spotify or Apple Podcasts if you're feeling particularly generous. And lastly, please support our sponsors who make this podcast possible to help us keep bringing you this content every week, Shopify and Deliver in Person. If you would like introductions to the team there, please let me know. Before you go, we'd love to invite you to join our free e-commerce learning platform, Add to Cart Campus. Meet other professionals and learn from e-commerce experts to take your business and your e-commerce career to the next level. Register to join Campus at addtocart.com.au/campus. Now, if you enjoyed today's episode, make sure you share it with a friend or a colleague, or even better, leave us a review on Spotify or Apple. It really makes a difference.